Hello and welcome to the first episode of my chess skill fix video series. In each episode of this video series, we'll be dealing with some particular situation in the game of chess, which is either a forced win or a forced draw for us, but which requires us to know some key ideas without which it's not possible to achieve the desired result. In each episode, I will be playing against a computer opponent, Stockfish. And why the computer? Just because I want to make sure that my opponent plays perfectly and that I achieve the result that I want, not due to some blunder made by my opponent, but despite his perfect play and because of the important concepts that I mastered and that I invite you to learn now. In this first episode, we will be dealing with quite an unusual endgame where we have a king, a knight, and a bishop, and our opponent has a lone king, and the goal is obviously to checkmate the lone king and to make it in under 50 moves, because this is just how the chess rules work. When there is no pawn moves and no captures, we have to checkmate our opponent in 50 moves, otherwise it's a draw. In each episode, we will be using Lichess, which is, in my opinion, one of the best web platforms that we can use to play chess and to master our chess skills. We'll choose Play with the Machine option. And now, here in Variant, we will start from position. Now choose Board Editor. And since we don't want to play against the computer from the starting position, we want to clear the board and to put only 4 pieces on the board: white king, white knight, white bishop, and black king. And I just put them to their starting positions, but obviously you can choose any configuration you want. Now let's click Continue from here, Play with the Machine. Choose the highest level of automatic intelligence so that, again, we make sure that our opponent will make no blunders and that we will win just because we know how to win in such positions. And don't forget to play with white, but not with a random color. Okay, so let's discuss the situation a bit. The checkmate in such situation can be achieved in 3 stages. On the first stage, we want to force our opponent's king to go to the edge of the board. And, well, it's on the edge now, but it can walk in any direction, and we want to make sure that it can't escape the edge of the board. So let's put our pieces into play. Well, our king is not enough in order to force black king to go to the edge of the board, so let's use the help of our minor pieces. And I'm not commentating much because our first goal is pretty easy, so I'm sure that you will be able to achieve it on your own. But we will soon achieve the second stage, and this second stage is much harder. Okay, it's important to avoid any stalemate because it will be rather unpleasant for us to make a draw in such a position, even against a strong computer. Okay, so I achieved what I wanted. Black king is on the edge of the board, actually in the corner. And there are only 3 squares available now for the black king. These squares are A8, B8, and C8. The problem though is that black king is now in the corner where we can see the white square, and we have black squared bishop. And when checkmating our opponent with bishop and knight, we want to force this king to move to the square which has the same color, to the corner where the square has the same color as our bishop. And this is actually the second stage, the toughest one. We need to know a very important idea in order to be able to win on this, to achieve the desired result of this stage and to win eventually. So as a first step, let's make sure that our opponent does not have A8 square anymore, and the only way to do that is by placing our knight either to B6 or to C7. Let's place it to C7. We need to make 3 moves for that. Okay, so now black king does not have A8 square. And the second thing that we want to do is to secure B8 square by our bishop. And yeah, it's important not to do this by our knight, because knight to A6 is a stalemate. Okay, we forced black king to move to D8, but there are still 4 squares to H8. And it's now important not to allow black king to escape. And so the first important step was to move it out of A8 square, then out of B8 square. The third important idea is this W-shaped path for our knight. And now it's time to make the first move on this path by placing the knight on D5 and securing E7 square, so that king to E8 is pretty much forced. Now, well, we obviously can't play knight to E7, but let's help our knight with the king. And now, despite it might seem that black king will be able to escape, let's play knight to E7. Okay, now let's look at the squares in this quarter of the board where the black king stands, and let's look how it can escape from this quarter where we want it to remain. So G6 square is guarded by our knight, but none of the F6, G5 and H6 squares are guarded by our pieces. We can try to play king to E6 to secure F6 square, but it will be not correct, because after king to H6, black king can reach H5 square, and we can't prevent it from doing that. Instead, let's guard H6 and G5 square at the same time by our bishop. Okay, so now black is on F6. And again, let's look at the squares. H6 square is controlled by our bishop. G5 square is also controlled by our bishop. G6 square is controlled by our knight, as well as F5 square. Squares E6 and E5 are controlled by our king. So we've built a wall, and it prevents now black king from escaping from this quarter of the board. And if it was black to move, they would move their king either to f7 or to g7, and we will be able to improve the position of either our king or our bishop depending on how our opponent plays. Instead, it's our move, and let's just pass the right to make a move to black by making a waiting move by our bishop. Let's just play bishop to d2. Okay, against king to f7, let's now continue shrinking the part of the board which is valuable for the black king. Again, let's look at the squares. e6 is controlled by our king. g6 is controlled by our knight. And these three squares, f6, g7, and h8, they are on the same diagonal, and we can put our bishop there because it's not needed anymore on the diagonal from c1 to h6. It's just too far from black king. So let's play bishop to c3. And let's now improve the position of our king. Okay, so black wants to escape via d8. We don't want that. Let's restrict black king. And now it's time to continue the path for our knight. And you remember this shape of the letter W. So the next step on this path is f5, securing the g7 square. And now we can finish this road by the knight by playing knight to g7 check and forcing black king to move to f8. Now e8 square is guarded by the knight. Let's just defend the knight, forcing the black king to move to g8. And it's almost in the corner. In order to force it to remain in this corner, let's guard h6 and f8 squares by our two pieces. Let's, for example, play bishop to b4, securing f8 square. And now let's play knight to f5. Okay, so in this position, and look, we have just 11 moves until it will be a draw. So in this position, black king has only 3 squares, g8, h8, and h7. Well, let's now leave him only 2 squares. We can grab h7 square by placing our king to g6. Black king now has only g8 and h8. And it's time to invent some checkmate. And it's actually very easy here. So let's imagine that we can move our bishop to any square we want. In this case, it will definitely be a square on g7, forcing black king to move to g8 and then delivering a checkmate with the knight. But since black king can only move through via g8 and h8 and it can't escape this small island in the corner, we can just make some, let's call them again, waiting moves. Bishop f8, black king has the only square to move. Bishop h6, and now we have what we wanted. We have bishop g7 check, and you have a choice. You can deliver a checkmate by playing knight to h6, or knight to e7 is also a checkmate. Okay, so we achieved what we wanted. Again, there are 3 important stages. On the first stage, you force your opponent's king to move to the edge of the board. On the second stage, and this is important, this is the toughest stage, and this is a stage where you need to remember the exact steps. You want your opponent king to move to the square of the board where to the corner of the board where the square has the same color as your bishop. Finally, on the last stage, when you forced your opponent's king to move to that corner, you just deliver a checkmate, and that's pretty easy to calculate. So nothing to worry about except for stage 2. And now, as promised, I will show you how you can train this concept on your own. So, go to lichess.org and you can do that. You can play there even without registering. So it's pretty easy. Just go to lichess.org. Now choose Play with the Machine and set the position that you want. And my advice to you is first to try to checkmate black starting from the same position as I did, but then when you will make sure that you can repeat what I've just done, let's make the exercise more difficult for you. For example, let's rotate the board by 90 degrees, and by saying that I mean let's put our king here, our bishop, let's say here, and our knight here, and black's king here. Okay, so it may be a bit tougher. Then let's put our bishop to white colored square. In this situation, you will need to force black king to go not to the black colored corner, not to a1 and not to h8, but either to a8 or to h1. So you have 4 sides of the board and 2 colors for the bishop. Therefore, you have at least 8 exercises to master this skill. And after that, I'd suggest you to turn to some more realistic endgame, starting just from some random position and making sure only that your opponent can't win any of your pieces by force, so that this is really winning for you. And I urge you to go to lichess.org and to start practicing right now, because what you have just seen and what I hope you understood is not enough in order to deliver such a checkmate in a real life game. So don't waste your time, go to lichess.org, and I'll see you in the next videos. Thanks for watching, bye.